get is y'all don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Hello, welcome back to Hitting the Apex. It is race week in Japan. These time zones are not kind to me, Evan, but thanks for joining me again. This is an exciting week ahead, and despite not having Formula One, exciting weekend in the previous weekend. We're going to talk through some of that as well.
Very exciting weekend. Great in a lot of different forms of racing that we were going to definitely talk about this week. Including NASCAR and WEC, or IMSA, I should say, and some interesting Formula One tie-ins as well.
Yeah, well, let's start there. So most drivers, a week off between races, relax. Max Verstappen decided to go racing. So I'll pull up some of the photos of Max driving. This is not Max, but he is here in his Mercedes. Just to start right there, he's driving a Mercedes. He looks on little. Well, actually, can center this like that. And so he's in his Mercedes here. There he is, taking the checkered flag to win the race temporarily. But then, Evan, tell us what happened to Max's win here.
So just some context behind it. So he's been kind of dabbling a little bit here and there in GT racing. He's been talking about how much he wants to drive, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is obviously one of the greatest races in the history of the world. He's done a couple little races here and there, mostly stuff on the Nürburgring, which is where he was at this past weekend for. I'm not even going to attempt to say the name of the race because it is a German word and it's very long and it's like something with an L and something with a B. I don't know. But anyways, it was a 4-hour race. And it's basically what we used to call the Nürburgring Meister Ring or Meister Series or Master Series. There was GT3 cars out there. There was, GT4 cars out there. There was cars that were basically, there was Supras and Porsche Cayman GT4s that were basically fresh off of the showroom floor that were racing out there at the same time that Max Verstappen was racing. In this beautiful Mercedes, GT3, AMG GT3 car. It is, like you said, very interesting that he was in a Mercedes, considering that he's been a rival of Mercedes for a long time, but he's also driven Ferrari 296 GT3 car. He's also raced in the what I guess would have been more appropriate Ford Mustang GTD GT3 car. He has raced in that before. So it just seems like this was just the car that he chose for this particular race. He did come out and win with his teammates. It's a 3-person team. They dominated the entire race. I mean, they were leading basically from start to finish. If I'm not mistaken, a couple or his other 2 drivers are also his co-drivers when he does sim racing as well. So he kind of gave them the opportunity to race in actual cars, which is cool that he's giving that opportunity to these drivers that might not have been able to get that opportunity any other way. And like I said, they dominated. But after the race, it came out that during qualifying, I guess, and into the race, they used more than the allocated 7 sets of tires, so they actually disqualified him. So just Max Verstappen's luck this year, goes out and dominates a race and then gets disqualified from it, afterwards.
Well, one way to look at it is it's bad luck. The other way to look at it is, wow, look what happens when you enforce rules against a car that says Red Bull on it. They get disqualified instead of Toto shouting no Michael and no microphone. So
yeah, Well, I guess that's what happens when it's just the German media going out there, or the German rule makers going out there,
Yeah,
not
but yeah,
the
they are strict.
FIA.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, violating the cops cap is a pretty big deal that they
Yeah,
basically got slapped on the wrist for. So yeah, so
but
but that is interesting that they only had the 1 week off. It wasn't like they have a longer break coming after Japan, obviously because of the race cancellations. But with 1 week off, he chose to do that. You saw all the other drivers kind of relaxing, taking a little
yeah,
bit of a time off. I mean, this is not to me. This is, I mean, you use more than that. Okay, tires. It's pretty easy to not do.
yeah,
So, like I get it if it's like, oh, this thing was a millimeter off this or whatever, and sometimes
yeah,
over the course of a race, they go from in compliance to out of compliance just because they're you're driving it around at high speeds. There's a lot of airflow going on, and it can move parts around slightly. But you know, using too many tires is not one of those things. That is pretty easy to avoid and pretty easy to get caught on too if you're doing that. So
yeah.
it was not a little pedantic rule there. It's kind of like, well, you blatantly violated it.
Yeah, but it was a fun race to watch. It was the Nürburgring, so any of our listeners, know what that is. It's one of the most difficult tracks on the face of the earth. It's I think 26 miles long, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. It's a huge track, and it's no wider than 2-lane highway. So you got these big cars that are flying at top speed, going around, at 180, 190 miles per hour at some points, maybe even over 200 down the long straight that they have. And on top of that, you're going around against some cars that are basically stock cars off the showroom floor, while racing up against drivers who are kind of, some of them are top drivers in GT, or top drivers in German GT driving, but a lot of them are just guys who do this for fun. And you got Max Verstappen out there, probably the best driver in the world, whipping his way through a lot of it. So definitely look up some of the replays of that. It was a fun watch, going into the weekend. But again, we had a lot of other good racing this weekend as well. So if you want to go on to the next group of stuff, I'll move on to the next stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I know you're saying there's some exciting racing at Sebring. We got some photos from there as well. While you talk through what went down there.
Yeah, so this week also was the Sebring 12 hour, which is a part of the Triple Crown of endurance racing between, the 24 hours of Daytona, the 12 hours of Sebring, and then the 24 hours of Le Mans. Those are really the three biggest races when it comes to endurance racing in the world. They're the most prestigious. They've been running, basically continuously since this one, at least, has been continuously ran since 1953. And it's in our backyard. It's basically from where we live. It's a 3.5 hour drive, or depending on how fast you drive up there.
Yeah,
But
well,
it's
yeah,
in
about
the
that though. It's drivable. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely drivable, and it's on a track that's old and bumpy and harsh, and the only this is one of those places that the only reason they can only do 12 hours there is because the punishment that these drivers and cars get put through around this track is insane. You see these basically spaceship machines that are flying through this place at 150, 180 miles per hour, bouncing around and almost getting out of control at any given point, banging into each other. And in this, you have the two different prototype classes between the GTPs and the LMP2 cars, as well as GT3 cars. So, the normal Porsches and Ferraris and Mercedes that we saw, Max Verstappen driving, as well as the top line performance cars in the GTP class. So, it was a great race as well. 12 hours long. So it's the one day, or it's a 4-day event, but the 1 day race. So you don't have to go into the next day. The racing was amazing all throughout in all the classes, the GT3 classes, the LMP class as well. The car we're showing in the front there is PJ Hyatt in I can't remember the name of his team, AO Racing, LMP2 car. Spike the Dragon is what they call it. It's painted like a dragon. It's one of the fan favorites. They also had a pink Porsche 911 GT3 car out there that was a pink car painted like a dinosaur. They call it Roxy, and it was just a beautiful looking car. As well as if you that's the right there's the Aston Martin Valkyrie, significant to Formula One, because it is a part of that AMR group owned by Lawrence Stroll. But that is the only naturally aspirated V12 race car in existence, or racing in top level sports car right now. All the other cars are hybrids. That's the only car that's non-hybrid, non-turbo, V12, naturally aspirated. It sounds like what we all dream, Formula One to sound like. So they were racing this weekend. They had a pretty decent showing. But if you go to the last one with the Porsche on it, the white Porsche, right there, that was your race winner, Felipe Nasr and his team for Penske Porsche number 7. Basically, between him and the number 6 Porsche, his teammate, came out and dominated. They're in a beautiful Mobil 1 livery, kind of a harken back to the old GT1 Porsche 911s that they had in the late 90s that won at Le Mans. But it is very significant in this race win because there hasn't been a Triple Crown winner, meaning Daytona 24, Sebring 12, and Le Mans 24, for a very long time, if not ever. I don't believe there has ever been a Triple Crown winner. Maybe Surtees did it or somebody did it back in the 50s or 60s, but there hasn't been one in a long time. He won in Daytona. He won here in Sebring, but they are not going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans this year. First time ever Penske Porsche is not going to Le Mans in a long time. They've won they won last year, if I'm not mistaken, but they came in second or third place the year before behind the Ferraris. So it's sad to say that we're not going to have that opportunity to see if they're being able to go out and get that Triple Crown because, man, the Penske Porsches were out there dominating. We all thought the Cadillacs were going to have a chance. Cadillac usually has a good, strong showing in their GTP car at Sebring. But it was basically Porsche 1-2 the entire time. So again, great racing, great stuff to watch. It's fun to put on just to have in the background. If you're a racing fan, you get to see everything that's going on. I listen to a lot of it, just the call of it on the radio. At night, you get to watch, them going into that transition into the nighttime, which is gorgeous in that part of the state, because you have basically you're right in the middle of the state. You don't have the water shimmering, off of everything or the water haze kind of messing with the light. You just see basically the light go or the sun go down. And again, as we saw in that one picture that we had there, it's just gorgeous out there and it's a fun atmosphere. So definitely something to look out for next year. Obviously we'll talk about the 24 Hours of Le Mans when that comes around in a few months, but yep. And just a shout out for Morgan. Tyler Reddick won this week in NASCAR. He's having a great year so far. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the season there.
Yeah, shout out to Morgan and your father as well. Got 3 generations of sons right now. We're talking to. So we got everyone hanging out here. Evan, it is time for the main event, the reason for the show, the Formula One. So, we thought it'd be a chill week, no race. Max was off driving endurance racing. Antonelli's flying commercial airplanes back home for some reason, and you can see him sitting there in business class in the seat. Nope. No. I guess we'll start with your boy Adrian Newey. So we're still not entirely sure the chain of events. It sounds like he had some kind of a blow up with Honda and just decided he didn't want to deal with them anymore. So he might have directed his own demotion out of team principal. That's the latest rumor I heard. But in any event, he is out as team principal. We'll get into who's potentially his replacement in a minute. But I guess how surprised are you that this took two races and it's just abandoned ship?
I mean, it was a surprise in the first place to hear that he was going to take that position. I mean, everything we've always heard about Adrian Newey is, he's kind of that introverted behind a blackboard, drawing up the cars, figuring out the technical aspects of it. You gotta have a certain personality and a certain, you know, I almost want to say gravitas to be, the team principal of one of these Formula One teams. I mean, look at the Toto Wolffs, look at the Christian Horners, look at the, you know, the Matina Bonatos, even, they all kind of have that, you know, it's hard to say. It's Zach Brown. I know he's not the team principal, but he's kind of that same personality within McLaren. That team didn't have or doesn't have that person yet. That team doesn't have that guy yet. Lawrence Stroll maybe, but he's more. At least this year, he's more in the background than he's been in a lot of years. I know we're kind of used to seeing him a little bit more, but he hasn't really been around that I've seen a lot this year. So it's kind of like one of those things that when I heard or when we heard that he was going to take over that team principal spot, it was kind of like, oh, cool, Adrian Newey, team principal, awesome. Let's see how this works out. But I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't think it's gonna. I never thought that this was gonna be a permanent thing for him. I was hoping it was gonna work for him though, but obviously it didn't.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I think you laid it out really well. One of the things that I think he's, like you said, he's an engineer. He's a car designer. He loves that aspect of the sport. And he also loves kind of the strategizing, the race strategy. How do I get this thing to the finish line the quickest? I think he kind of discounted a lot of. That's what the team principal's doing during the race, is helping direct that. Although there's inputs from engineers and all that, but they're making decisions. The rest of the time, they're CEO of a major company that is schmoozing and glad handing and boardroom shit that Adrian Newey does not want.
Yeah.
And I think it was that part of the job was probably disappointing to him. I don't think he necessarily realized how much of the time that they have goes into doing that and not on focusing on the racing. No, the design team's working on the car. You need to be meeting with this Arab sheikh who's trying to give us $1 million. Like that is, and so I think that was part of it. And then I do also think definitely the performance of the car, especially the engine, just not being anywhere competitive. I think, again, this is rumor. We don't know exactly what happened, but it sounds like he kind of had a blow up with Honda that made that relationship more difficult. And he's kind of like, I need to just be out of this for all, because someone needs to repair that relationship, basically. Essentially, Fernando Alonso did.
Yeah, but I mean, it's warranted at this point. I mean, Honda came out with an engine that they said wasn't going to last 26 laps or 16 laps,
so, but
whatever it was.
Thing, right. So this is the part of the job that I think he underestimated that he probably was ill suited for. You gotta just eat it.
Yeah.
One of the things you realize is the higher up you get in these, and again, these are all
big corporations,
hundreds of millions or $1 billion, depending on which team it is. Teams like these are the higher up you get in that, the more you have to basically be stone faced and just deal with crap and not do exactly what he did. You gotta understand that's your business partner. Yes, they screwed up, but you need to work with them to get the engine better, and you cannot throw them under the bus, and you can't yell at them, you can't demean them, because you have a working relationship. That means that even though they screwed up, everyone knows they screwed up. Yeah. Everyone knows they get an inadequate engine that you're not going to compete with. You just got to eat it and move forward with them anyway. And he was not capable of doing that, because I think in his head, he's like, I designed the perfect car and your engine screwed it up. Now, whether or not that's true, we don't really know. The engine's not bad. Like you said, basically, it can't last a race. So, so I mean, that's driving a lot of it. But, part of being that team principal is it doesn't matter when your partner screws up, you still, work with them to get through it. And he just just didn't have the patience to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is partially so Morgan says Honda made two huge blunders. They didn't hire new engineers to replace the ones lost to Red Bull, and they came into the sport too early when they knew they were way behind. That's part of it. The other part is Aston Martin agreed to work with them. They knew all that.
Yeah.
And so, again, they Aston Martin knew damn well that if they bought Mercedes engines again, their car would be much better off in the short term. Their thinking was, we will never beat Mercedes with their own engine. The fact that McLaren just did probably, belies some of that, but that was their thinking. They knew they were going to take this pain because they were like, we would rather be the only team Honda's working with and have our dedicated engine, because we think long term that is the way to build a better car and beat everyone. And they don't think buying engines from Mercedes can do that again, even though McLaren just did that. But I think what caught Aston Martin off guard is how bad it was. They expected it to be bad, not this bad.
Not that bad. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you wanna see Honda being dominant. You want to see Honda doing good. They were so good at the last. In the last generation of engines, the fact that they fell off as far as they did is really, kind of a surprise. I think it's one of those things that, like how Morgan kind of said, the fact that they lost some engineers probably when Red Bull, because Red Bull probably hired a few of those people that they had working on those Honda engines.
Well, they sold a lot of the intellectual property to Red Bull when they exited the sport, like Redbird Powertrain or whatever the hell they were calling it before. Now it's Ford. Yeah. Like that was just them buying Honda's stuff and they own it. So Honda did have to start over to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things here, right? Because this has all happened before. McLaren did the same thing in the last generation, or 2 generations ago, I guess, was when they were with Honda. Same logic exactly. If we stay with the Mercedes, we'll never beat Mercedes.
Yeah.
And it blew up in their face, ended up going to Renault and then back to Mercedes and actually winning with the Mercedes. And I'm surprised that Aston Martin decided to repeat the same cycle. But then, obviously, Honda eventually came good for Red Bull. So not all is lost. It's just they got to be patient with it. It's going to take a while. But eventually, towards the end of the previous generation, like 2 generations ago, the one that Mercedes dominated most of it, towards the end of that, Honda had caught up with them. And then, obviously, there's a whole new design and now second design from that. But yeah, they're gonna have to suffer through this a little bit, that, and also hope Honda stays in the sport, because they have dropped out and come back in multiple times, and they might just do that, and then Aston Martin will be back to buying engines. But I mean, this was all foreseeable when they chose to go that route, going to a company that really had not been in the sport. Certainly hadn't been developing engines because they sold it all off to Red Bull. But that was the gamble they made. I'm surprised that this early, 2 races in, they're just like, again, worse than they expected, but still, they should have expected some of this.
Yeah.
So with that said, now with Adrian Newey, being, I guess, it's almost like a self-devotion. Like, I don't think Aston Martin did anything, but I think he basically was like, I don't want to do this job anymore. There's an open spot, and coincidentally, Evan, Jonathan Wheatley is out at Audi for personal reasons, spend more time with his family, however you want to. He's just decided to want to do it. And, well, first of all, can we talk about how somehow Matteo Binotto is somehow back as a team principal in Formula One?
Hey, I love Matteo Binotto.
He's the one who's going to step in, and now he's the team principal at Audi. I mean, I'll let you take this wherever you want. Where do you want to start? You want to start with Wheatley or Binotto? You can choose your own adventure here.
I mean, I guess we'll start with Wheatley because that's really the basis on all this. They had I think Audi went on a hiring spree, real quick, real hard. When they decided that they were going to come into Formula One. Essentially, they hired 2 guys in Matteo Binotto and Jonathan Wheatley that were going to be and are capable of being team principals, Obviously we saw Binotto do it for a long time for Ferrari. Didn't have the greatest track record there, kind of, had some blunders that we can all look back at and see. But overall, not a bad thing. Not a bad job he did there. I think, just the fact that they couldn't beat the Mercedes is the reason why he ended up leaving. And then the Red Bulls obviously was the reason why he ended up leaving Ferrari, or they parted ways, I guess you could say. But there seems to have been a thought process of, let's get in all the best people possible. We'll figure out how it's going to play out. We'll, see where we can put them all there. Now with Wheatley, his thought process is, oh, I want to leave because, I want to spend more time with my family. Obviously, Sauber is based in, I forget where Sauber's based in. I just lost it. It was just in my head a second ago. Um, anyway, wherever Sauber is, I think it's in. Anyways, we'll figure that one out later.
Yeah.
Switzerland. Thank you, Morgan. Um, being that it's not based out of England, he wants to be back closer to his family. He wants to be back closer to where he's from. Obviously, he was there with Red Bull for a long time, so that's his saying of it there. Now, with there being that opening in Aston Martin, there's obviously been a lot of links there. He worked many years with Adrian Newey. This could be the kind of the reasoning behind it, so there's not that look of collusion or look of them talking to him while he's still under contract. But either way, this is probably what we're all seeing is it might play out like this. There are some issues, we're hearing with Lawrence Stroll and things that he's doing, or I guess it would be the money or stuff that they're talking about, or whatever it may be. But eventually, I think that's what's going to end up happening is you're going to see him going to Aston Martin and basically taking over that open position that Adrian Newey just left available. Now, to get into Matteo Binotto, I think he's going to do a good job at Audi. I think Audi's kind of, shown a little bit more than what we all expected so far this year. They've looked okay. They haven't looked great, but they've looked okay, kind of in that fight, in that midfield fight right now, which is good, for where their development is, considering that they have their own engine. They, built this brand new car, and, we'll see how it all plays out. But, overall, this is one of those things. This is, silly season before silly season, but we'll see. I'm sure we'll see a couple more situations like this happen, throughout the year, just because this is how it always is in Formula One. There's always going to be movement. There's always going to be insider trading. There's always going to be, people saying that they're stealing ideas and concepts. And, this is Formula One. This is a part of it that we all, we've all seen happen many years, or for many years.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not really worried about Audi Morgan right now. I think they're, this is all the beginning of it. Everyone's done 2 races in these cars that are not very reliable. So it's hard to see who has pace. But I think, Evan, to your point, we're going to see this year's going to be a little chaotic, given that the level of change this year to this generation of cars is further down the road towards essentially being battery powered. Although they can't ever fully be battery powered because Formula E has the exclusivity on that. So if they ever try to do that, actually, Formula E that owns it. So they're going to always have to have some kind of an ICE. But frankly, a lot of teams screwed up their designs on that. And cars aren't reliable. And heads are going to roll as a basis of that. And I know part of this was Adrian Newey pushing himself, being I don't want to do this role, but also like he shares some of the blame for that car. That car stinks. And the same thing, Audi, I agree, they're in the fight sometimes because cars DNF. I think they're unlike Honda, who left the sport and then came back in essentially to partner with Aston Martin. they've been preparing for this for a long time. I think they expected to be better off than they are. They're not Cadillac. They're an existing team, as you mentioned. They're Sauber, that everyone knew Audi was going to take over this year. That's been growing to this point. I think they, frankly, like when they see them behind a Haas. And so, yeah, I mean, as Maureen said, they started making their engines earlier, but also this has been a years-long plan to big splash when Audi takes over. And it's, they're behind the Haas. Like, that's not going to work for them. So, while I think Wheatley, I don't think he was fired, I don't think there were any tears shed for him leaving, because I think they're also like, we screwed this up. Like I think all of these teams are talking about certainly expected to be behind the big four teams, right? They didn't think they're going to beat Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, or Red Bull. But
some of them are beating Red Bull.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other issue because Red Bull screwed it up, and we'll see how much longer there's change over there as well. But being behind the Haas on pace is something. These are major manufacturers now. Aston Martin, Lawrence Stroll's a billionaire. He put a bunch of money into that. Audi is a major. That's the Volkswagen group. They don't expect to be behind some rinky-dink thing run out of Charlotte. Like, this is embarrassing for them. And like that, frankly, I think these teams are like, we shouldn't be behind that. And I think that's ratcheting up the pressure too. The fact that Haas seems to have largely gotten it right as much as they can, I think actually makes the pressure on the other teams even worse, because like if they're sitting up there with their limited resources, how are we in the back? Why is our car blowing up? And they got it reliable.
Well, they also have the backing of the Ferrari engine, so.
No, that definitely helps. But I think Volkswagen pretty much figures they can handle their business, and they don't expect to be back there. Anyway, the silly season started early. This year we've had multiple DNFs, like significantly more than we normally get. We've got 2 race cancellations and 2 team principals out, and we've only had 2 races. Crazy. It's been a crazy season, and it's just getting started. But we are now, as I mentioned earlier, we are headed to, we're staying in Asia, and we are headed to Japan. Let's let Evan take us through a lap.
So I wasn't able to do the whole voiceover and everything I usually do for this one because I was having a little bit of issue with my computer and stuff going on. But this is one of those circuits. We'll look at a track map of it. A lot of people know Suzuka, very famous, one of the only Formula One circuit that goes over itself. Kind of a figure 8 situation. Turn 1 always very exciting coming in through that front straight. There's always been issues there. We saw last year, was it Bortoletto who wrecked there, or one of the rookie, or Colapinto had wrecked there. Somebody, one of the rookies had
I
wrecked
think it
there
was
because
Colapinto. I think it was Colapinto. Yeah.
his DRS didn't close down and went off the corner there. But then from there
Yes.
you go.
Yes. Yes.
So from there you go into the famous S turns. That section 3, 4, 5, 6 is world famous. If you've played any video games with any type of race cars in it, you know those turns very well. Lots of undulations and lots of Morgan says it was Duhan. It wasn't Colapinto. So
Okay.
thank you for that, Morgan. But going into the S turns, like I said, very famous. Lots of elevation changes there. The next turn, or the next big part of the lap is the Degna 1 and Degna 2, which is right into that the yellow section, or the second section of the lap, which then goes into the hairpin, and it's basically called the hairpin. It's what it's always been called, from any time you hear them talk about it. That hairpin is again banked. It's famous for lots of accidents we had. Who was it? It was for Aston Martin. What's his name? Fernando Alonso had an incident there last year, which was very exciting to see. Because these cars are basically coming down to almost a stop when they're coming around that hairpin. So from there, you have the long right hand sweeper, which then goes into the spoon corner, which then leads into the long back straightaway into, again, one of the most famous turns in all of racing. 130R is what it's called, where these cars are basically going to be doing it flat out. It's going to be very interesting this year to see how that plays out, because that straightaway is a very long straightaway. Not quite as long as what we saw at China, but it's about the same length as what we saw at in Australia before the chicane in Australia, and we saw how they were lifting and coasting and basically slowing down before going into that curve. If you do that here, you might unload that suspension and go right into the gravel pit, because that corner needs a lot of downforce. That corner needs a lot of grip to be able to go into it and be able to keep your lap going. From there into the final chicane and the final turn to finish the lap off and come over the start finish line. It's a very fast lap. It's a very, very fun lap. All these drivers know it like the back of their hands, and it always produces great racing. Last year we saw, Lando Norris up there racing with Max and almost get taken off onto the grass, basically cutting, being a lawnmower in his McLaren for a portion of that race because of that. But it was definitely a good race last year, and I expect it to be another good race this year.
Yeah, and looking at as you took us through the lap in the video as well, you can see why it's a driver's track. A lot of sweeping turns, not a lot of time. Even the straights are still banked, and there's not a lot of just straight line. It's a lot. So like you said, keeps you on your toes, and it'll be interesting to see who can get a rhythm around here. So it's very much one of those tracks where when you become one with the car, you can kind of smoothly go through it. But I mean, you did a great job of pointing out all the areas on the track where if you don't get it exactly right, you go off. And again, this is an old school track with gravel. You will get stuck. Your race will be over. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said, who can manage their battery when they get it charged. There's two straight modes. You mentioned the back straight here, and then the start finish. The activation mode for overtaking mode is between turns 17 and 18. But yeah, I mean, so there's so many windy, twisty parts of this track, and then the two straights are primarily where they're gonna have to recover some battery at the ends of those, and then those are difficult corners that are exiting the straights that they have to get right also. So it's going to be a challenge for these drivers.
Yeah, and I mean this you hit the nail on the head saying all the different variations of turns. This was a test track. This place was designed as a test track for Honda for many years. That's what it was before it became so famous as a racing circuit. So that's the whole point of having all these different curves and different versions of curves as well. And actually, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the battery situation works out, because really what you don't want in the with the current formula is you don't want a lot of straights that lead into smaller turns that then go into more straights. You want kind of big braking zones. You want kind of big areas where they're going to be able to slow down. And that's something that this place actually kind of provides, because if you go through the two Degnas, once you get to that hairpin, you're slamming on those brakes into the hairpin, and that's where you're going to get a lot of regen. Then going through that next sweeper to the right into the spoon corners, you're again going to use up maybe a little bit of that battery power, but then going to spoon, you're going to have to brake as well. And that double apex turn between those two spoon corners are what's going to be able to give them enough battery power to be able to then push through the main straight onto 130R. Now, are they going to deplete that power before they get to 130R? Or are they going to be able to still have enough to get through 130R and get to the chicane? Because that final chicane is going to give them another opportunity to really boost up that battery to then be able to push it into that front straight. So really, I think what we're going to start looking for, and what we can look for in this track, is not just the opportunities that they're going to have to pass, but where those opportunities that they're going to have to regen the battery a lot. And that's probably going to be one of the things that we look for in a lot of these tracks moving forward, is those opportunities, because that's what seems like it's really making the difference for these cars. You're saying Mercedes having the best ability to do it and utilize that battery power, but if you give all these other teams the opportunity to be able to regen, and be able to use the battery more, or at least be able to use it more often, because they're not just running through it like how they have been in the past two circuits, it's definitely going to make for better racing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're hoping. I mean, look, again, I think on merit, Mercedes did a better job preparing for this generation of cars. They definitely, especially with the power unit, and that's kind of showing up now. But even with that, there's hope that this is a little bit different track, definitely more technically challenging. The first two, maybe we'll get a little bit of more variance and a little bit more competitive. Because the fact that, I mean, like Antonelli was great in China, the fact that George Russell barely didn't even really get to set the car up and just easily qualified second is not. It's not a good sign. It's like it's all screwed up. Barely got him out to the pits. Barely got it out of the garage. I'm gonna easily get second. It's not great for anyone. All right, the tires. We got the hardest compounds: C1, C2, C3. I think we pretty much covered why that's the case. This is a high deck track because it's a lot of undulations, a lot of twists and turns, and stresses the tires. But we'll see. It has been with that said, has been a one stop.
Yeah.
Now we'll see if that's the case this year. It's also not a big safety car race. Again, it's an old school track with runoffs and gravel, where a lot of the newer tracks don't have that, and you tend to get more debris on the track during incidents where there are gravel runoff areas, which tend to incapacitate your car, but actually put less stuff onto the track. But we'll see how that plays out in terms of the timing. Not good for us, man. Well, I guess not good for me. Let me zoom a little bit too zoomed in. Get the whole. All right, we got practice one on Thursday night at 10:30. Practice 2 at 2 a.m. on Friday morning. Practice 3 at 10:30 p.m. on Friday. Qualifying 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, so Friday night and Saturday morning, and the race 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. This is the last of the Asia leg. After this, we all know where the next race is. Because the two in the Middle East have been canceled. So the next race will most definitely be time zone friendly. It's right there.
Literally. Which way?
It's just over there.
That way. That way for me.
I point the right direction. Oh, it's there.
I was gonna say, if you don't know where that place is by now, you go to that place a lot.
I know. I don't know what. I didn't know what direction I was facing. That was my fault. That was my fault. It is there. Okay, so with that said, weather, it looks like maybe qualifying might get a little bit of rain, but looks like we're headed to a dry race. Although forecasts change frequently in Japan, and even on race day, sometimes they don't forecast rain. Like, what are those clouds? And then the next thing you know, it is raining. So don't necessarily commit to this, but right now it's looking, again, 5 days out, looking like a dry race. All right, Evan. What talking about the race? Obviously, what teams, drivers are you kind of most interested to see?
Well, I want to see how Ferrari comes out. Obviously, they have been the main challenger to Mercedes. Mercedes has been the dominant force these first two races, being that each one of their drivers has won. And I want to see how Ferrari comes out. Let's see if they can, if they were able to make some adjustments in this past week. If they were able to, figure out some stuff, because they have been having great starts. They have been battling, for those first couple laps, and but then Mercedes just kind of walks away with it. So we'll see how it all plays out here. This might be a track that might be a little bit, better for them. Being that Australia was kind of a toss-up. We didn't know what was going to happen there, but then China with that long straight, man, was always going to be a Mercedes, a Mercedes type of track, because of the type of power that they could put down. But this track is different. Suzuka is different. Suzuka, you don't need the power to be able to perform. So we'll see how that plays out. And obviously, with what ended up happening with McLaren last race, both of them dropping out. I want to see how they bounce back. I want to see how they bounce back. Let's see how they perform coming into this week, because they're the previous champions. They're the reigning world champions in both the drivers and the constructors. Were they able to find something in this past week that maybe will help them, at least claw back a little bit of that performance, get rid of a little bit of those gremlins that they had in their car, and be able to at least compete.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming they know what was wrong. Now, again, at the time, they claimed it was different issues on each car, but we don't know that that's necessarily different battery issues with each car. So
yeah,
we'll see. I'm looking at the Ferraris for sure. We talked about this after the last race in China, but that was the first race where you're like, Hamilton's faster than Leclerc. Let's see if that continues this week. And then I'm looking kind of at the midfield, right? We know Williams is in trouble. We know Audi and Aston Martin are in upheaval. We know Cadillac is kind of at the back of the grid. So there are points to be taken there for Haas and for Alpine and Racing Bulls, who have been surprisingly strong. So I'm kind of looking between the three of those. And you could even, wink, wink, throw Red Bull into that mix, because they're kind of not distancing from those cars. But yeah, how does that shake out? I do think, assuming, reliability, I think there's a pretty clear Mercedes is 1, Ferrari is 2, McLaren is 3. I think Red Bull is 4, but they might not be. So that's where I'm kind of looking at that whole battle between those cars. And then I think at the back you're gonna have your Aston Martins or Cadillacs, like that. That's just they're gonna and the Williams, even though they got points in the last race, it was more just reliability of everyone else. So yeah, I'm looking at that midfield battle because we still don't really. It's so hard to gauge even after 2 races because we know who's good, right? We know Mercedes is great, but we don't really because of reliability issues. Like like you can't look at the standings. The points are all over the place because if you had a DNF and drop down, that doesn't mean your car is necessarily slow. So it's just another data point for that. All right, Evan, it is time for the main event. Obviously, anyone that's watching, feel free to throw into the chat your top 3 order finish as well as your surprise pick. Evan, the floor is yours to deliver a prediction.
Well, let's see if it's the same as yours again.
We'll see. We did very much have similar picks, although you managed to get the surprise right, and I did not. That was where we deviated. So all right, what do you got for me?
I'm gonna go. I want to say it. I'm gonna do George Russell. I'm gonna do George Russell 1. I wanted to do Antonelli for the back-to-back, but I'm gonna do George Russell 1.
Okay.
I'm gonna do Hamilton 2, Antonelli 3. I think this might be that situation of Antonelli gets caught up in a fight with Leclerc, maybe doesn't have a good start, falls a little bit further back, and then this track again, like we said, or like I was saying, hopefully is going to be one of those tracks that the Ferraris are going to be able to compete. I think it's going to be a lot closer of a race this time around. You're not going to see the big lead. You're not going to see the big qualifying different. Qualifying might be interesting because you can't have if you get locked in on qualifying here, you can make up a lot, or you can distance yourself a lot in qualifying. But I think during the race it's going to be different because obviously they're going to be packed up. They're going to be bunched up for the majority of the race. But I do expect. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to go with my predictions. As for my surprise, 2 McLarens finish the race.
Are we allowing that? Meanwhile, Morgan came in with Max top 5. Like, we're allowing all this now? The guy who finishes on the podium every race is now. What has happened?
I mean, has 2 McLarens haven't finished a race yet this year.
I mean, I would have accepted Piastri starts the race. So
I'm gonna go. My surprise is 2 McLarens finish the race.
I think we gotta allow that. I think we have to allow that given all the issues they've had.
All right, let's go. 2 McLarens finish the race in the top 10.
All right, we'll do that.
Okay.
We'll do that. Although I do think if they finish, it will be the top 10 because I think the only way they don't finish is like what we've seen a lot of this year is teams have an issue. They get the car back on track, and they're like, go ahead and run some laps. It's basically testing, and then they retire the car before the race ends. Because that way you can, there's benefits to engine reuse and all that.
Yeah.
So okay, and so as I alluded to, well, I will leave that alone. For the what Morgan has, he's got George winning as well. He's got Kimi second, Leclerc third, and Max top 5. So man, what a difference a few months make. We've got Max top 5 and 2 McLarens finishing in the top 10 as surprise picks, and you know what? That's reasonable as a surprise pick. Those are definitely things that are not a high probability based on what we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for me, I've got I'm going Hamilton to win.
Okay.
Antonelli second, Leclerc third, and Evan, I think based on that order of finish, you can probably guess my surprise pick. It's time to bring it back, man.
Oh, George Russell. George Russell DNF.
Yes, there it is. There it is. That is the only way he doesn't win the race. He's got to have some kind of an issue. He has so much. Yeah, I look. All respect to Antonelli for winning in China. George Russell
Yeah.
is so much faster than him in that car on like merit. Like if it's just a straight shot, something got to happen to him, or he's going to run away with it. So
Yeah.
I'm going George Russell DNF, and that opens up for Hamilton to sneak a win. Antonelli second, Leclerc third. That's what I'm going with.
Nice.
Morgan, I appreciate you calling me the Lord, but yeah, that's okay. Look, man, we got to spice it up a little. Like we need something to happen here, otherwise it's going to be George Russell coronation season is what's happening so far. So
No,
had to
thank
bring
you.
back the George Russell DNF. I mean, he's doing it on merit. He's driving the shit out of that car, and you know.
Before we finish up, though, I do think that it is worth a search of the special liveries for this week, because that is always something that comes around for Suzuka, is some of the best looking cars of the year. Between here and Monaco, these teams come out with some of the best looking cars. I don't know if you've seen the Mercedes yet, but wow.
I saw the Haas one that they're calling the Godzilla. Oh, I do see the Mercedes now.
The Racing Bulls looks good. The Mercedes looks good.
Yeah.
Racing Bulls and Morgan said find the Aston Martin special livery. Oh wait, I'm guessing they should be one of the ones that has a good livery because they're Honda now. So
Well,
this is their home track this year.
Let's see. The new ones. So Haas did, like I said, the Godzilla one. The Mercedes is the Wolf livery that you.
Are we able to pull it up or no?
I'm gonna have to find them individually. Let me see.
Okay.
Here's a Reddit photo. Here, let me show. I can show this. This is the Mercedes one.
Morgan said Aston Martin had one and then they canceled it apparently.
Well, there's the Mercedes one.
The Wolf.
Yes.
For Toto.
Yeah, and then we're live googling over here. So let's see. I think I saw. Here's the Haas one.
Yeah, that Haas one looks really good. I guess this would kind of be a home race for them too, wouldn't it? Because they're Toyota now with the Gazoo Racing.
I mean, but it's still using a Ferrari engine.
It is, but there's still, they got Gazoo Racing, so Gazoo Racing in Japan, that's big.
Okay, let's see. Red Bull potential white livery. I haven't actually seen anything with that. And then here's the Racing Bulls.
The Racing Bulls ones looks good with the red. I like the way the Racing Bulls look this year. I like their air inlet on the top, the kind of flat on the top with like the rounded bottom. I think that looks really good this year.
Yeah, so I think those are the only three that are actually, because they said this is rumored, and I didn't actually see Red Bull change anything. So I think it's these three. So
okay.
That was them.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll see more throughout the rest of the week, especially going into practice and everything.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, I am confirming there's 3 that have dropped so far. Those are the 3 we looked at.
Oh yeah,
will be interesting. We'll see. We'll be back next week to talk about the results of that race. Hopefully, get a little bit of a shakeup, and then quite the long break before they're racing in Miami. Because again, there's 2 races canceled, so there's a 3-week gap after this weekend's race. 3-week or 4-week? What is this? Well,
I think it's 3.
Let's see. The next race after this is in Miami, and that is, pull it up now, May 1st through 3rd. So it is a full ass month.
Luckily, the NFL draft is in the middle of all that, so we'll be able to at least
so get this.
Look at
there's
that.
a month. There's a month. So obviously the race this week is March 29th is the race day. Then May 3rd is Miami, so there's nothing in April. And then it's 3 weeks to Canada from there, May 24th. So this is like old school when there were 14 races on the calendar and you had these big gaps in the middle.
Yep.
And then it starts coming back then with Monaco, the the next week, and then Monaco's in 2 weeks after that. Monaco's not on Memorial Day.
Oh, is it?
It says June 7th.
That's a change. It's always been on Memorial Day. It's always been the
It's
same.
not this year.
When's the Indy 500? Because it's always the same day as the Indy 500.
I'm assuming the Indy 500. There's no way they moved the Indy 500 off of Memorial Day. Yeah, May 24th is. So instead of Monaco on Memorial Day, they've got Canada on Memorial Day.
Really?
Weird. Anyway,
That is weird.
whatever. That's assuming the races go on, because who the hell knows at this point. But anyway,
Wait, is there any Formula One races on that May 24th weekend?
Canada is.
So that's Canada.
Canada's May 24th.
Okay, because I was gonna say, Fernando's been dying to win the Indy 500, but
There's no way you could do both those races.
No. Obviously not. But that's always been the thing: is does he do Monaco or does he do the Indy 500? But now you can't.
Yeah, well, you can't do Canada and then turn around and do the Indy 500. Although, if you think about it, he goes. I guess they'll be at the same time. Honda's going to be the same time because of the.
Yeah. That's the problem.
This is crazy. Yeah, that 4 p.m. is the Canadian GP, and then the Indy 500 was at 2:00 or whatever. So.
And then later on that night is the Coca-Cola 600 for NASCAR in Charlotte. Because that's what a lot of people do, is they do the Indy 500, and then they fly from Indianapolis to Charlotte to do the Coca-Cola 600. Tony Stewart did it. I'm sure Morgan could say exactly who it was that did it.
Yeah, I
recently.
feel like Max, if it was still in Monaco, had an opportunity to do the Monaco and Indy, because his Monaco race only lasts a few laps before his car breaks, and he can go straight, and he could probably make it by the green flag in Indy. So.
Yeah, Larson, Kyle Larson did it last year.
He got a time difference, and it's early enough in the morning where he can retire that car pretty quickly. Maybe he won't even make the grid; he's just immediately out of there.
Or maybe he just qualifies there because that's the only thing that's important in Monaco. Let somebody else drive.
Yeah, true. There are options, but he's in Canada. Took those away.
Yeah.
The races are going to be at the same time.
Yeah, that's going to be definitely a good weekend to watch racing.
Yeah. Need multiple screens, I guess.
Wait, May 24th. I think I got something going on that week. There's definitely something happening that week. Morgan might know what it is.
The Indy 500?
No. There's something happening that Wednesday during that week that Morgan might know about. Plus his birthday's after that, but we'll talk about that later.
All right. Well, for this week, there is, we're not going to have that friendly timing. We're going to get the overnight racing, the race again for the operative sessions. Qualifying is technically Saturday early morning, but it's Friday overnight, 2 a.m. And then the race is Saturday overnight into Sunday at 1 a.m. We'll be back next week to talk about those results and the George Russell DNF that is definitely happening.
If you say so.
Evan? Yes, I'm speaking into existence. Evan, thanks for joining me as always. Morgan, Jeff, everyone else in the chat, thanks for hanging out. And we'll be back next week to review the Japanese Grand Prix. Take care.
Bye, guys.